nation. It's Alex Jones coming to you live from the front lines of the InfoWar.
The threat is real. That's the name of this song. Came out this year. Already a hit. Dave Mustaine's Megadeth. And it's about radical jihadist terror. And I think the name of the song says it all. The threat is real. But if I breed 100 black widows, as I've said many times, and then go dump them in your bed at night, they don't take orders from me, but it's their nature that they will end up biting you and probably making you very sick or killing you. And so the globalists have been funding Saudi Arabia, protecting it, allowing it to launch these proxy armies, and opening the door to 5 million, most of the military-age men, jihadi into Europe. I guesstimate the number's close to 1 million. They claim it's just a few 100,000. The Democrats now want Obama to bring in another 10,000. 3 years ago, Merkel was calling it 10,000 that she was letting in. Turned out it was over 1 million. So that's the normal equation they use of fraud. 10,000 is 100,000, then 100,000 is 1 million. And if you look at just the high schools and other schools around Austin, each one taking hundreds of, quote, refugee children alone, not to mention their families, the numbers are thousands and thousands per city. And so what happens when they start attacking and airlines are going down every day? What happens when they start shooting up schools and colleges and movie theaters every day? The answer will be, from Hillary Clinton and others, coming after your guns. When they're the ones that opened up the border, they're the ones that, quote, completed the smuggling process. That's from the head of the Border Patrol Union. They're the ones that allied themselves with radical Islam. Now, in the Clash of Civilizations document, PNAC, September 2000, written by Dick Cheney, Jeb Bush, and others, they openly say, we want to have a clash with Islam. We need a Pearl Harbor event with mass casualties to sell the idea of an invasion and a defeat of Islam. Now, that would be corrupt enough to stage something or let something happen so you have an excuse to defeat radical Islam. But what's even worse is to tell the military you're doing that so they go along with the false flag at a certain level, kind of ignore what the evidence shows because it was compartmentalized. Most of the military wasn't involved. The military blew the whistle. The FBI blew the whistle. Not defending those organizations, they just did. It's a fact. That's now all been documented. But the word was it was done to crush Islam. Well, now you notice Islam's not being crushed. In fact, the most radical, evil form of it out of Saudi Arabia is taking over. And the triple cross, not the double cross, the triple cross is on. And the word is the head of the CIA is a Wahhabist, and I think the evidence is overwhelming that is indeed true. I thought a decade ago, before he was the head of the CIA, that maybe it was a double cross of them. But clearly, no, this is a triple cross. Because when you've got 1,300,000,000 people and maybe 400, 500 million of them are ready to kill and are like robots, that is tailor-made for global totalitarianism. And the globalists want to weld that in to the West and make radical Muslims the mayors, the police chiefs, and man, they're all over Europe arresting people. They're all over Europe, very aggressive statements on TV, on German TV, Muslim leaders, your women belong to us, blonde hair, blue eyes, bad, we're going to get you. Remember we played that clip 2 days ago and yesterday? The Pope came out. In fact, I forgot that article. Will you guys pull that up for me? Thank you. And actually told a French newspaper, Christianity is bad, Christian roots are bad. He actually said it's bad to say Europe is Christian. And he likened Christianity to ISIS. These are quotes. You cannot make this up. There it is. Pope Francis likens Jesus to ISIS, says Muslims must breed with Europeans. Now, to be clear, the globalists plan in the end to destroy European liberty, to destroy the Middle East as well. They plan on crushing everybody and bringing in a one-world religion on the ashes of the Christian/Muslim/Jewish/Hindu conflagration. And a lot of ignorant Westerners will go, the Hindus are totally peaceful and wonderful, perfect people. They're actually pro-Western, and they're actually totally anti-Islam because Muslims have been killing them for 1,000 years. And a lot of experts believe that could be what starts World War III, is the Hindus and the Muslims. I mean, we are sitting on top of just gigantic thermonuclear time bombs here. It's out of control. And I've tried to de-escalate things. I've had the late Hamid Gul on that would interview no one else, the former head of Pakistani intelligence. I mean, he would not talk to Western media. He agreed with my analysis of the situation. It's not an anti-Islam analysis. It's not an anti-Pakistan analysis. It's not an anti-India analysis or anti-Israel analysis or anti-U.S. analysis. It's a pro-humanity survive analysis. And the globalists are bringing in a world system designed to cause conflagration and total meltdown. Now, I mentioned this article earlier today, but I want to get into some of it right now before I go into the latest that's broken with the whole situation. With this latest plane, Egypt Air Flight MS-804, taken off from Paris, now found in the ocean. Remember what happened on October 31st, Halloween 2015, Metrojet Flight 9268, the Russians. The Russians, within 2 days, said it was obviously terrorism. The jihadis released a video of their Stinger missile taking it down. And the Russians just basically sat back and took it because they know they're being poked into a larger war. And our own media tried to spin it for months saying it wasn't terrorism. No, it was terrorism. We're going to be talking about that as well. But first, this article is on Infowars.com. It's on ZeroHedge.com. British general says a nuclear war with Russia in 2017 is entirely plausible, close quote. With tensions between Russia and the West at post-Cold War highs, a former NATO deputy military chief is now, that's the deputy head of NATO formerly, is now, the vice president of NATO, is now saying that a nuclear war with Russia over the Baltic nations in 2017 is entirely plausible, according to RT. And they have links to his statements. With tensions between Russia and the West at post-Cold War highs, it's actually worse than ever, a former NATO deputy military chief is now saying that nuclear war with Russia over the Baltic is entirely possible in 2017. General Sir Richard Sheriff from Britain served as second highest NATO military office in Europe from 2011 and 2014, has written a fictional book about a nuclear war with Russia in 2017, triggering by a dispute over the Baltic nations. And notice it's all happening. While the story is indeed fictional, Sheriff said the story is based on entirely plausible scenario. The scenario in which Sheriff lays out is that Russia would first occupy Ukraine to secure the land route to Crimea and then invade the three Baltic nations, all of which are members of NATO. He claims Russia will do this because it feels NATO is perceived as weak. So this is very hawkish garbage. And Russia will be oppositional about what it sees as alliance attempt to encircle it. Russia has 3 military bases outside of its landmass. We have almost, well, it's like 400 smaller bases, but close to 200 big ones. And we're run by globalists who are openly trying to start a new world war and who've moved missiles up to Russia's border. And again, I'm not a Russophile. I'm not a Francophile. I'm not an Anglophile. I don't worship the British. I don't worship the French. I don't worship, I guess you call me a Texophile. I mean, I love Texas, a Marophile, a George Washington-phile. But that's better than Salon, pedophile news publication. I mean, literally, every few days now promoting it. I mean, that's my view. That's what they're pushing. That's what they're saying. But that's a side issue. They should speak out if they don't like that label and say, no, we don't support what's being written here. But I digress. The fact is, Russia is trying to stop a societal, cultural, population collapse and has reversed course 90% from globalist policies. They've been under them as a test bed since 1917 that U.S. and British intelligence installed. That's declassified. Look it up. And so, thank God Russia isn't under New World Order control. Do I totally trust Russia? No. Do I think Russia's perfect? No. Does Russia have incredible corruption? Absolutely. But Russia isn't coming after my guns. Russia isn't coming out with behavioral control vaccines that eat part of your brain. Russia is banning GMO crops. Russia is speaking out against the New World Order. Russia is trying to stop jihadis all over the planet and going in and taking them out. And then we sit here and see our country run by absolute anti-human scum trying to destroy our sovereignty, flooding us with uncompatible jihadists. Basically, our elites do 170 degrees the opposite of the Russians. They're not 180 degrees because the Russians still do some bad stuff. If the Russians did all the evil stuff our government's doing, they'd be aligned with them. And Russia isn't perfect, but Russia is not committing suicide, okay? And we shouldn't commit suicide, and Europe shouldn't commit suicide, and nobody else should commit suicide. The globalists would destabilize the Middle East, they'd destabilize Latin America, they'd destabilize Asia, and all these other countries and regions and continents. They're playing the third world off against the first world. The third world's not our enemy, but they're being mobilized into a political, economic structure that will bring us down. The taxes, the migration flows, everything is geared and pointed at making us subservient and breaking us. And the article goes on, we need to judge President Putin by his deeds on his work. He has invaded Georgia. He has invaded the Crimea. He has invaded Ukraine. He has used force and gotten away with it, the retired general told BBC. And that lines up with our generals calling for war and body bags. And the truth is that in 2008, NATO-backed Georgian troops on record, that's indisputable, attacked Ossetia, South Ossetia and Abkhazia and killed thousands of people, wiped out whole Russian UN bases in that demilitarized zone that's been part of Russia for 1,000 years. They killed everybody, and the Russians poured across and pushed them back. And our media ran the hoax saying Russia had invaded. It was totally false. And then I was called a Russian agent by mainstream media for just reporting the facts. Then they go on to say he's invaded Crimea. Well, that's always been part of Russia. They've had a bunch of wars over it. Half of Crimea has been part of Russia. They have longstanding problems killing each other. I'm not taking a side, the Catholics versus the Orthodox, but that's what the State Department manipulated with the anthropology and the psychology and created that overthrow that started all that. So Russia had to come in and take control of its gas delivery systems to Europe, its main money. So the West started that. And Russia didn't take all of Crimea. They took part of eastern Crimea. So what do you expect Russia to do when you start seizing Russian infrastructure that's on its border? I mean, what would we do if the Russians were in Mexico and we're overthrowing the Mexican government and then we're moving troops up to our border? I guarantee you we would attack them. And so there is a proxy war going on right now with Russia. That's how insane all this is. And if the globalists are crazy enough to push their different rebel forces in these different former Russian republics up against Russia, Russia is going to respond. And then if the West sends in armor, Russia is going to use nuclear weapons and has said they would. Tactical nuclear weapons. Then NATO says they're going to start hitting Russian bases. Then Russia is going to fire and start hitting U.S. bases. And then they start attacking the major city centers. Because you know, a lot of big U.S. military bases are stuck right in the middle of cities. By the way, almost no one else does that. But because of our frontier system, most of our cities were formerly military bases when we were having westward expansion and taking over from the native tribes. So it's not been done on purpose that most of our military bases are right in the middle of cities. But it's a major strategic problem because they're going to get hit. And that means you're going to get hit. And your family's going to get hit. And by the way, top generals across the board worldwide, you can just search engine, Ministry of Defense, Pentagon, Chairman Joint Chiefs say the world's in the most dangerous position it's ever been. The world is the most unstable it's ever been. And then we've got Obama running around saying it's the best it's ever been and our economy is the best it's ever been. He also said Obamacare was going to be free. He also said nobody was coming after your guns. He also just lies to you. These people are out to get us. I have analyzed what they're doing. It doesn't even help their interest. They are crazy.